be alright. We gon' be alright. Nigga, hit me, nigga, feel me, we gon' be alright. Nigga, we gon' be alright. Huh? We gon' be alright. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but I'm trying to figure out how to play a little bit of music without Facebook kicking me off. We're gonna see how this works. I just love this song so much. I used to get my Sundays started to Kendrick Lamar every Sunday. So something about this song that really gets me going. And I apologize to my elders in advance for the language. But you know, I guess you have to do what you have to do to reach the youth, reach the young people. I guess I needed to get "We Gon' Be Alright" in my spirit this Wednesday evening. Motherfucker, you can live at the mall. I can see the evil, I can tell it. I know it's illegal. I don't think about it. I deposit every year to zero. Thinking of my partner, put the candy, petting on the regal. Digging in my pocket, in a profit, big enough to feed you. Every day my logic, kill another dollar just to keep you in the presence of your Chico. I don't talk about it, be about it. Every day a sequel. If I got it, then you know you got it. Heaven, I can reach you. Head dog, put dog, that's all. Big back and chat, I'm shopping back for y'all. I wrap up. Anybody else got a favorite song they've been rocking with during quarantine? Let me know in the comments what that is. I'm always looking to add to my personal playlist, so I'm open to any and all suggestions for good music. But thank you guys for tuning in. Everybody that is watching with us, you are looking at What's Good with Ebony Chappelle, and I am Ebony Chappelle. This is a show about people doing good things and things that make us feel good. And tonight we are discussing one of the things that means a lot to me and that makes me feel good, and that is doing my civic duty by voting. So unless you've been under a rock, and I don't know how you couldn't know this because social media is consistently inundated with voting and everything that's happening. I'm trying to do two things at the same time if y'all can't tell. But, you know, we have been so inundated with this 2020 election. We've watched a couple of debates. There may be some more presidential debates coming, you know, down the pipeline, but we have been really inundated with this information, and so much emphasis is put on the presidential race, on the race for governor. We will elect our next governor here in November, but there are other races on the ballot that are just as important, if not more important than those big offices. And those are your local races. So the people that are involved in your day-to-day life. I remember years ago, I think I was just really feeling down about some different things that were happening in the community and that I was seeing, you know, in the news. And I thought, you know, what's the point of any of this? You know, maybe, you know, politics, just who cares? And someone had to explain to me, you know, I may have whatever personal feelings I have, but from the cradle to the grave, politics plays some role in your everyday life. So it's best to be informed about what's going on and find out how to make it work for you and find out your place in it, as opposed to just completely checking out and, you know, tuning out of what's going on. So tonight we are going to talk to just a few of the people that are on that ballot. I mentioned, you know, local races. So tonight we're going to talk with a couple of people that are running for school board, IPS School Board to be more specific. So these are just a few of the people. I want to tell you guys to definitely do your research. So I'm going to put a link to a story done by WFYI that talks about the different that talks about the different people that are running for IPS School Board, since that's going to be the focus of our conversation this evening. I'm just talking to 3 of the people, but there are 10 people in total that are running for IPS School Board in different districts and also the at-large district. So it's important to find out who that person is in your district, who those candidates are, and you can do that. I'm going to put up this banner again. But this website, this is where I send everybody, vote.indy.gov. You can find out where to vote. Early voting is happening right now at the clerk's office in downtown Indianapolis, but you also have the opportunity to early vote beginning on October 24th at so many other places around the city. There's about 6 places that you're going to be able to go, but you can find out more information about all of that by going to vote.nd.gov. So again, there are about 10 people running for IPS School Board tonight. I'm only talking to 3 of them. I just wanted to have a conversation about why these people are running and to help you understand the type of questions you can even ask the candidates in your district. A lot of them are on social media. There are so many different ways to try to engage with them and to find out about where it is that they really stand on the issues. So without further ado, I'm going to bring these people into the room to have this conversation. This is an interactive activity and a show. So if you have comments, if you have questions, you can jump into the comments and you can leave those, and then we can read them over the live stream so you can get your questions answered. So I'm going to go ahead and bring them into the stream so that we can get this conversation started. But good evening, everyone. How are you all doing?
Good evening. Good evening.
Doing fine. Yeah.
Great. So I just, again, want to say thank you to the 3 of you for taking out your time to have this conversation with me. There have been so many wonderful panels and forums held by other people in the community. I know WFYI did something. IPS Community Coalition did something where they talked to candidates. So this work has been done already. It's just there's never too many opportunities to keep spreading the word to people, to help them understand why this race is so important and help give them, tools and information to better empower them as we all move along. So thank you so much for being here this evening. Let's get started with some introductions. So Ms. Gore, you are right next to me on the screen. So I'll go ahead and allow you to introduce yourself. You're also an incumbent. You've been on the IPS School Board before. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
Okay, thank you. And thank you very much, Ebony, for having me on your show tonight.
Of
I am
course.
Elizabeth Gore, and I'm running for at large. I am an incumbent. I've been on the board now for the last 4 years, but I had 4 years prior to that. So this is my 8th year. I am a very passionate person about our IPS schools. I care about the students and I want the best for them. I feel that running again, I bring wisdom because I have been on the board before. And I really would like to continue to work to discover what we can do as a board to ensure that our children are productive, and especially during these times when I call the new normal with the COVID and those kinds of things. So I'm really looking forward to another 4 years to being able to work with the board and to make sure that our children progress rather than regress as we go to get them a quality education.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Gore, for sharing that. Brandon and Randall, we're talking to each other in a different capacity from some of the other things it is that you do, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Brandon Randall, and I'm running for District 1, which is the Near East Side, the Christian Park area, Emerson Heights, Irvington area, and then a small pocket downtown. So I decided to run because I've done youth work and community work for about 13 years. And I just wanted to be able to do impact work on a systemic level. And I said, let me, go for this local level, look at how I could, make a difference on the school board, looking at policies, looking at, a variety of things, but also still being engaged with families and students. That's my day-to-day job, is working with young people. So, I wanted to find a way to step up that level of impact and just continue doing the work. Because at the end of the day, the work is all that matters.
Wonderful. The work is all that matters. That is a quote to live by for sure. DeQuavis, tell us a little bit about yourself. Thank you for being here.
So thank you for having me and for doing this. My name is DeQuavis Winston. I'm running for IPS School Board District 2, which is going to be the far east side and the near east side, sandwiched in between Lawrence and Warren Township schools, and a little bit of Washington Township schools as well. I've been working with youth for many years, all the way down from working in the preschool classroom to the high school level. The majority of my time has been with high school students. I still work at schools today, mentoring and coaching students as well. And so I feel like I bring a different perspective that hasn't been on the board, at least in a while, of someone who's working with students and staff and parents and community members day in and day out. There's so much that you don't know or see about by working in school. Working in a school where, in the times we are now, I'm seeing the policies and the procedures that had to be in place for our students to safely return to school. And even when you do the best you can do, sometimes it's still not enough to stop the spread of COVID and following health procedures. We're all human, we can only do so much. But for me, it was seeing how so many of our schools are neglected, and others aren't, but seeing which schools aren't neglected, it was a little bit disturbing and kind of saddening to hear someone talk about how IPS high school graduates who go to college, and go to a four-year college, only about a third of them graduate in 4 years. That tells us that our diplomas aren't that strong, and that we have to up our game to ensure that our students are successful. Our numbers, it's one thing to, work to get numbers high. It's another thing to actually make those numbers mean something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you know what, DeQuavis, thank you. That was a very thoughtful and in-depth response, which brings me into my next question, which is maybe a random one, but somebody asked me this the other day when I told them that this is what I was going to be doing tonight. They asked me, do any of them have students that currently attend IPS? Like, do they have children that attend? And I was like, oh, that's an interesting question. I'll ask. I'll find out if that's the case. So do any of you currently have any children that attend IPS schools?
I do not have children that currently attend. However, I have 3 that all attended and graduated and are doing professional, the 2 are still doing professional work. So I feel that IPS is the best.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I attended IPS.
Wonderful. So thank you. And DeQuavis and Brandon, I saw you both not know, but the person's point in even asking that question was, okay, well, what makes them even want to be on the school board? It seems like a lot of time, a lot of energy put into this thing. Why? So I'm posing the question to you guys. Why is that the case? I think we heard from Ms. Gore, IPS is the best. Yeah. We got her answer, but for Brandon and DeQuavis, what is your response to that?
So for me, because my opponent, one of his main points is that he's an IPS parent, and he touts that very well. For me, I am not a parent. I don't have any biological children. However, I work with students every day and have worked with them for 13 years. So I've got a bunch of little nephews, little brothers, and a lot of my current students are IPS students. And so, I believe in, it takes a village to raise a child, and I take that to heart, because even though I did not help in their creation, I most certainly am involved in their support.
Thank you. DeQuavis, what about you?
Yes, so I do not have any kids, but like Brandon, from me working in schools and coaching, spending so much time with the kids, and even after they graduate, keeping in contact with them, they're like my kids. And then on top of that, I do have a lot of family members who are in IPS schools. They go to neighborhood schools, and so I do have that connection of kids in the schools. It's not my kids, but it's my little cousins, nephews, things like that. And so, but no, I don't have my own personally, but I have family members who do attend IPS neighborhood schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for those reasons, would you say that that is what empowers you to want to be involved in this way?
Yeah. So, everyone wants their kids to go to a great school and to be the best that they can be. I want that for all of my family members as well, just like my mother and my grandmother did for us when we were younger. But I also want it for everyone else's kids. There's no reason any of our kids shouldn't be going to a great school and shouldn't have a great experience and should not, every child should be able to get a great education right here in IPS. You don't have to go to a township school. You don't have to go to any other type of school, whether it's parochial or anything. You can get a great education right here in IPS. And I think we got to make that a standard.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So thank you all so much for answering that question. I have another one, just thinking about the future. If you were elected, and I want to pose this question to everybody, if you were elected, what are the top 3 things that you plan to change about how the school board / school district currently operates? And Brandon, I'll go ahead and get started with you.
Yes. So the goal is day one. So proposing to create a committee to look at disciplinary policies for the district. So examining suspensions, expulsions, but also adding arrest. When you look at the racial equity policy that was approved, there was some intentionality on focusing on discipline, but it didn't necessarily include looking at arrests as equally as suspensions and expulsions.
Okay.
And so definitely looking at that. Also proposing to create a healing team or a team that deals with supporting families who have been victims of trauma in the community and just students in general, students and families.
Mm-hmm.
We have a record-setting homicide number this year, and that impacts so many families. And I think that as a district and as a board, we should be more intentional at affirming what folks have gone through, but also being a supportive body to make sure that they are, centered and supportive. And then the last one is I want to propose to create a leadership team that is for students and families, but students that are low academic performing, high disciplinary history. So I want to look at that demographic and create a leadership program centered around them and their families to make sure that they understand that they are leaders as well, and to work to increase their self-concept and self-esteem and reduce some of the challenges that they've had.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brandon, so much for sharing that. Ms. Gore, I will have you go next, and then I will also add on to your question. A lot of times when we are discussing the IPS School Board, some of the things that come up for people are really harsh and direct criticisms of the district as a whole, in addition to the board. So in addition to you sharing, what you would do moving forward, I want to ask you, as an incumbent, as someone who has raised children that have, matriculated through IPS, do you feel like the criticisms are valid?
Ebony, I think, and sometimes the criticisms are valid, because I think parents in the community deserve our best And a lot of times our best would be transparency. And when you don't feel that you're getting the information for your child or about the district that you need, yes, I do feel that the criticisms are sometimes valid. And when some of the things that I'd like to work on going back on the board is to lessen that gap of transparency and to make sure that parents not only know what to expect, but again, what we are doing to do it. And rather than letting them know at the last minute or telling them at a board meeting. So, yeah.
Yeah. And just a quick follow-up to that. Can you give an example of one of those moments where you felt like things weren't as transparent as they could have been?
Well, Ebony, there have been several. I think the parents may feel that way, however we try. But when you're closing schools, a lot of times parents feel, oh, I'm not going to go to that meeting because they already know what they're going to do. And the schools are going to close. I think prior to getting to that point, we need to have possibly made the public or our district aware there are problems here. We are facing some fiduciary problems as far as financial problems, or the school is having some academic concerns. And so we don't need to just make it a headline, but make it something that we have shared all along that year. So that's one of the things I feel. And it's a big thing.
Yeah, no, it is definitely a big thing. And I think people would appreciate you expressing that most definitely. DeQuavis, for you, the question about the top 3 things that you would change about how the school board and or district currently operates.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that we can change to better our district. But 3, I think one, going with the transparency is just like our innovation schools submit yearly reports. I think it's important that all of our schools do that. We keep such great tabs on our innovation schools and their data, discipline, and things like that. But then we forget about our neighborhood schools, and then we complain of, well, why didn't we know this school was falling behind? Because we don't look at them the same way. We wait till 3-4 years after they've been falling behind, and then it's like, oh my goodness, we got to do something. But if we keep track of them year after year, like we do our innovation schools, I think we can do a better job of putting those interventions in place early. Another thing, I feel that we need to review our budget and figure out, where we're spending money and how is it being used to increase student achievement. If the program's there and it's not working and it's not geared towards improving the student achievement, then it shouldn't be there. Same with positions. Sometimes we make all these positions that are unnecessary.
As far as within the administration of the school board?
Well, I think it's not just central office. We attack central office a lot of times, but even in some of our schools, we do a lot of things, and we get so holed up on one particular area that we forget about the so many other areas where there's things. Why is there all these managers in the food department in one office? Why are there 5 secretaries in one office? Things like that. We got to look at and see, is this something that's actually needed, or can we cut some of these, or maybe move them around to different departments? But then also creating more opportunities for the community to engage with the board and the district, whether that's, we have our showcase of schools once a year, but maybe we need to move that around so that it coordinates better with our enroll indie timelines. We should be able to go and figure out what the schools are all about before you have to apply. It shouldn't be, well, now I got to wait to the second deadline to look at the schools to go to the showcase. We need to do that earlier. Going out in our community, when they did the town halls, I believe it was last year, maybe that should be something that's quarterly that they do, and not just once every couple of years. And it has to be more opportunities for community members to engage with the board outside of 2 to 3 minutes at a board meeting but then having certain meetings where you cut off that public comment opportunity, specifically around special meetings.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you for jumping in and answering that question again. Something that I found very interesting is that you all are very passionate, very thoughtful about what it is, that you're sharing, but you all come from very diverse perspectives. So it's like attacking the issue from these different angles. And then even on a superficial level, completely diverse. And even when you look at the larger scope of candidates, it's a pretty diverse running field. Why do you think that is? And also, do you think that it's important to have some diversity amongst candidates? And whoever wants to take that question, go ahead.
Well, I think it's good to have diversity amongst the candidates because we have different perspectives. I have a perspective coming from the time I've been on the board, my time that I had children in the school, the time I was in school myself, and we all have the IPS experience. We all know what we want and we all care about IPS. And when you care, what you're saying comes from a deeper perspective than just your head. It comes from within. And so I think that my stage and DeQuay and Brandon, and I'm sorry, we all have different perspectives, working in the school, not having students, but are not in the school, but being able to see what the needs are. And so being on the board, yes, I'm close to what's going on, but I always know that we can improve.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's important too, to have a board that looks like the community that we're serving. I know 2018, it was a big deal to have, 4 African Americans on the board, 2 of them being new. After the 2018 election, and that was a big deal to go from, I believe it was 2 to 4 in one election. And so there's that, but then there's the diversity that we don't see in candidates that is there that you don't see physically. Myself, not only was I raised by a single mom, I was born to a single mom, but my grandma raised me. I was in and out of foster care after she passed away. I was adopted. And so there's things like that to where having a diverse set of candidates, you also have more people who can also connect with members of the community. A lot of people know that one of the things that I hate saying is parent engagement. A lot of people don't live with their parents, they live with a guardian. And so I always say, guardian, when I was working at Addicts, there were so many students who were living with aunts, uncles, grandma, grandpa, older sister and brother. And, for them, when you say parents, you think they're being smart when they say, well, I don't live with my mama, so you can call my parents if you want to, they ain't gonna pick up. But that's just the reality of, we got to be mindful of the way we talk about things and realize that we all come from different places and different backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely important to consider. Brandon, want to give you an opportunity to jump in as well, if you'd like.
Yeah, so I think it's important to have, different perspectives because, on the board, we're not always going to agree on everything. So I think that we have to be able to have diversity of thought and, perspective. But I think that as long as at the end of the day, the goal is the same regardless. The goal is to provide, the best opportunity and resources within the district for families, students, educators, and the community, itself. So I think having this, diversity of thought and perspective, I think it's going to create healthy conversations. And that's how change happens and, the impact that comes from that change. I don't want to be on a board where it's a bunch of yes folks like, oh, yes, we're just going to all agree with each other and not change because sometimes that happens and it negatively impacts the folks we're supposed to be serving.
Absolutely. And I think the same can be said of any of the political races that we look at. You know, there have been so many years of seeing kind of the same, persisting over and over again, which I think also does something as far as empowering voters and getting them engaged. You know, people have to have something to get excited about. You know, it's not enough to say, well, they should just be excited to vote just in general. It's like, that's unrealistic. Everybody doesn't get stoked about this. Okay. So sometimes they need something else to, you know, really bring them into what's going on. Something that has been, you know, in the news a lot lately is the amount of money that is in school board races now. You know, I remember when I was at the Indianapolis Recorder newspaper and writing stories about school board races and different things that were going on. And I remember talking with somebody that I was interviewing, and I wish I could remember who, but they basically put it into context for me like this. At one point in time, you could run a school board race from somebody's kitchen table. You know, it was pretty much that simple. Now we're in a place where it has become a multi-million-dollar situation, not only here, but in other places as well. What are your thoughts on the scrutiny that this has come under recently in the news and just also in community conversation? Ms. Gore, I'll go ahead and get started with you on that.
Okay. Well, I think that it should be something that's talked about. When you think of the salary of a school board member, which is $2,000 a year, it kind of brings to your mind, why do multi-million-dollar entities want to pay out that kind of money to get someone on the board? And so I feel that that is something that should not be put in a nonpartisan board that's trying to make decisions for children. Our whole goal is to make sure that children get a quality education. And when you bring that kind of money in and you're backing someone, whether we want to say it or not, sometimes that screws or skews their
Well, I mean, depending on how you look at it, it can both skew and screw. It can do
fraudulent
both.
slip. Okay.
Yeah.
But I really meant to say the other. But
Yeah.
and so that's why I am very concerned about multi-million-dollar people putting their money behind school board when the objective is not to make decisions for them, but to make decisions for our students. And the idea is close that academic gap, make sure that our Black and brown children are getting the education that they need, especially in IPS. We have 75% Black and brown students who now, I feel, with our equity resolution that IPS has put together, will begin to get an opportunity to have those resources put into not just some schools, but all schools. And that to me is the most important thing, that we are educating our children and reducing that academic gap. All children, no matter who they are, deserve a quality education. And that's what I think is important.
Indeed.
Not money, education.
Not money.
Yes.
Not money, education. So Brandon or DeQuavis, whoever would like to jump in on that one.
Go ahead, DeQuavis.
Oh, you know, I feel like, you know, Commissioner Gore, she really sums it up great. It shouldn't be one of those things where, you know, it's taking multi-million dollars. You know, why are they putting so much money into the school board when there's state house races to be had and dealt with? They're the ones that are making all the big decisions over there. But it just, my biggest thing too, you know, a lot of these groups, they talk about improving the education of Indianapolis. but they ignore the other 10 districts here in the county. I haven't seen a single one of them talk about Perry Township, Franklin, Warren, Lawrence, Washington, Wayne, Pike, Perry, none of that. But, they're doing decent, but they're not doing overly great either. So why are they not playing in those school board elections? Why are they not doing things over there to help those schools that are failing? And I just feel like, a lot of times people, they think that those who have the most money have the loudest voice, and because it keeps getting repeated over and over again, you think that's what's best for your community, even when it's not. And it's always easy to tack on and talk about, the poor Black and brown kids in Indianapolis, because it's, that just makes people's hearts melt that you want to talk about those kids, when in fact some of the decisions you're making are harming them, especially the kids who don't have quality schools to go to in their neighborhood, and they can't afford. They don't have the resources to be able to go to some of these other schools where you have to have, we have choice schools that you can go to, but if you don't have your own transportation, you can't get there. And so, you can't have it to where this is a great option if your family has a ride. You have parents who want to be engaged in their kids' education. They want to be able to get to their child's school, and some of these opportunities do not allow them to do that as well. So I think it's important that our races stay local, just like our schools are local, and the decisions that are made are local and made by people who are impacted by these decisions daily. Last time I looked, a lot of these people playing in our elections don't even live in IPS; they live in Pike. So their kids don't have to go to IPS. They have the luxury of going to Pike Township schools, or Lawrence schools. Some of them live out in Lawrence. And so they're making decisions for people's kids that even their decisions, that their kids don't even have to live by.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, so I think it's a lot of times it's manipulation, it's lack of authenticity, because a lot of these external organizations that are providing a lot of this money, and it's funny because it's like a semantics game. Like, you'll have folks who are like, well, I didn't take money from these organizations, but then you see them popping up on Facebook with 1,000 paid advertisements. It's the same thing. Like, you may not have cashed a check, but you definitely getting that paid advertisements on the left. So I think it's sad. I think that you should be able to run a good race without having to worry about your opponent taking in all of these external endorsements with all this money, because then it does present a skewed perspective, right? And so I think for a lot of the grassroots candidates, folks who are involved in this work and who haven't taken the big money, it's a harder fight, but it's a fight nonetheless. And I think that you're seeing folks who are committed to this work, committed to making a difference, regardless of the money that we get or not. We're in this for the right cause and the right reason. And as one of the candidates and all three of us on this call, we have not taken some of the the big endorsements, but we are fighting this race with every amount of initiative, effort, and consistency that we can, because we know why we got in this to begin with.
Thank you. And Ms. Gore, because you are an incumbent candidate and someone who has, been down this road before, just a question for you. Have you ever been in that situation where you could have taken this money that they're referring to? Did you decide not to? What has your experience been with that as a candidate that has already been on a school board?
My experience has been that possibly if I wanted to talk to those particular entities, um, that may have been their uh, ability to offer me that kind of money. I did not want it. However, I ran one for a 4 year term, and I was defeated by big money. This last time when I did run, the money was still there, but I defeated that person. So I think if you come with a program, if you come with a sincerity of trying to make a difference and people can understand that. I was basically caught off guard, because that was my first year ever knowing when I was defeated that people were bringing that kind of money to the race. And so
And what
you
did
just
that make you
gotta
feel,
think about it.
especially as a parent that has kind of watched the school board transition over the years? What was one of the first things that you thought of when you saw that transition happening?
I was I was like shocked, okay? And my first thing was, I think what I started out saying, why? Why would they want to bring that kind of money and support a candidate? Because I basically, during the time that I did win, I only had maybe almost $2,000 and put it to the best use that I could at that point. And so grassroots, you'll get people who will back you, your community, your family, and others that even are in the system or have children who care and who know that you are sincere. And I think that's one of the things that we as candidates have to try to project and be very sincere about not just saying it, but mean it, that you want to make a difference and you care about not all children. I think all children's lives matter, and especially within our IPS school system. Not, I'll say IPS school system, but when I see children anywhere, their lives matter, and that they are getting an education that will cause them to be able to graduate if they want to go to college, or to have a pathway career that will give them skills so that they can live quality lives. But to tell you how it makes you feel, you feel like, wow. But
Yeah.
I never wanted the money, so I'm fine.
Well, thank you all for speaking on that and bringing some light to it, because it is a consistent conversation that continues to happen in the community. Another one is the way that parents and guardians, and thank you to Quavis for bringing that to light earlier, because I just had to catch myself even then. I think we just kind of get in the habit of saying things, and learning to say them differently and more truthfully is super, super helpful. But being able to, for parents and guardians and caregivers, of whatever sort, being able to stay engaged and know what's happening with their students on a regular basis. That's something that people continue to talk about. If elected, what are your plans to help keep that engagement going and stay connected with the students and the caregivers in your district? So, DeQuavis, I'll go ahead and get started with you.
Yeah, so some of the things that I've talked about previously is just not just for the students who, I'm sorry, not just for during the campaign, but even after being elected, going out to the community, meeting them where they are, PTA, PTSA meetings, sporting events, community events, festivals, churches, neighborhood meetings, just meeting the community where they are, having pop-up office hours around the district, even if it's at a library or something like that, so that, you can stay engaged with them, not just at 6 p.m. after work, but sometimes in the morning, on the weekends. And so staying engaged with them that way, but then also, before the board has big decisions coming up. So, if we know we got to close some schools, going out and talk to the community about, if we had to close some schools, what are their thoughts? Are there certain schools on their mind that, hey, this school is close to this one, so if we have to close one of these, that's fine. Or maybe we have 3 elementary schools that are close to each other in area that aren't really getting a lot of enrollment. What if, those schools had a lot of work that needed to be done to them? And what if we just built one bigger school instead of trying to renovate all 3 of them? Things like that of, working with the community to figure out what's the best way to move forward instead of coming up with a plan ourselves and then saying, well, this is our plan, so we want to hear what you have to say, but this is
including them in from the beginning. Yeah, for sure. Brandon, what about you?
So my engagement is not relying on the stipulation that I'm on the board. So board or no board, I'm going to continue to, work with young people, work with families. But the goal is, while on the board, to be visible and to be accessible. When I worked at School 57, I was the parent involvement educator. And we used to, joke all the time because I told parents, like, this is going to sound unconventional, but if I needed to meet a parent outside of the club in order to talk about, their kids, progress or get some paperwork.
So like meeting them where they are in the very literal sense.
Absolutely. Listen, I will post up, if I need to stand in front of the gas station on something rural, let's go, wherever I need to be, I will be there. And kind of like DeQuavis said, I plan on having pop-up office hours or open door across my district as well, because parents want to see the people that they are electing. And I think a lot of times that's where we're missing the mark. We talked about transparency, but accessibility and visibility are huge challenges as well. So we definitely have to find a way to connect with parents and guardians and students and just make sure that we're supporting them in whatever capacity they want us to serve.
Thank you. Ms. Gore, what about you?
Well, I have previously been transparent. I've truly been visible. I love going to the schools when I can. Every parent knows that they can call me, write me, and ask questions. And I try to get back to them as soon as I can. And I don't give them false hope. If I don't know the answer, I find out or I'll get them to someone who can answer for them. Because I think the most important thing is being open and truthful with our parents. And so the main thing I feel that we as a board would do, and I like the new normal in some aspect, because I think it might give the board an opportunity to do kind of what you're doing, a Zoom, a town hall, where each of us can be available to everyone. I'm at large and Brandon's District 1,
And really quickly for people that maybe don't understand what at large means, because I mean, with the districts, they're geographically located. Right. And in that link that I sent from WFYI, it has that all mapped out so you can see what size of town. But Ms. Gore, explain to them really quickly what at large means.
At large means that I am available for every district. For District 2, District 1, 4, and 3. So I am a person who represents the whole IPS district. And so therefore, when Brandon has a problem, it's mine. When DeQuavis has one, it's mine. And I think that's the way we should feel. And that's why I think it's important that we do have town hall meetings or have areas that we can go to and talk. And so, and that we share when there are problems, because I may be able to give him a solution that he didn't think about and vice versa. So that's why I like having these nice young minds around so that we can share information when possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. we had a question come in through the chat. I'll go ahead and show it up on the screen. But Mary, and anybody can answer this. Everybody doesn't have to, but if you have something to share, go ahead. But she wants to know, how will you support an entrepreneurial track for students during and post high school? Anybody want to take that on?
I'll comment real briefly. I think one way you can do that is one thing I know, a lot of our schools are missing business classes. You can do that by creating business classes. And then with that, you can start like a DECA club or a business club and start a spirit shop or store at your high school as well. So those kids can learn those skills in the classroom, and then they can go work at the school spirit store or spirit shop. And during that, they're getting all those key skills to where they're trying to figure out how much of this item do I need to order? How much of that do I need to order? Supply and demand. Do I put them all out at one time, or do I spread them out over, a week time period? But then at the same time, how much do I price it? And then the extra funds that they're making, those can go back to supporting programming for to go to DECA competitions and things like that. Then you can also, try to team up with Ivy Tech or IUPUI or any of the other local colleges and universities to see if there's some type of certificate or program that our students can do, even if it's, an associate's degree by the time they graduate high school, to where they already have 2 years of school done, plus they have a license and a certification to where they can go on to start their own business afterwards.
Yeah. And you know what? Thank you. Thank you, Mary, for your question. She has another one that I'm going to pull up here in a minute. But what you shared sounds like something that is definitely attainable and usable for IPS. So I'm just going to ask you a follow-up. Even if you weren't elected, is that something that you would be willing to put forth as an idea that they could do moving forward, and maybe you be engaged in some way?
Most definitely. I mean, while I don't know a lot about business or anything like that, I'll be more than willing to help in any way. I've worked at schools and went to a school where that was the setup there. And so I do have seen it. And like you said, it's something that's easily attainable, and it offers more courses for our students to partake in.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you. We have some more questions coming in. So this is another one from Mary and Brandon. Actually, Ms. Gore, I'm going to have you take this one.
Okay.
But this is another one from Mary. How do you or will you help get more funding for special needs services from the federal and state budgets after those funds have been cut severely over the past few years? And I thought you would have some insight on that and could better answer her question.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the most important things is that as board members, we need to not forget that we have a legislative body in the city, and that we sometimes will have to advocate. We will have to go and make sure that they understand our needs when our budgets are cut. And special needs is obviously one of the most important parts of our school, because we want those students to end up being as successful as anyone when they also are able to graduate. So I feel that special needs, when funds are cut, that we have to make sure that we are getting those funds in the school. And sometimes we have to call our senators, call our representatives, and make sure that that money is given to the school. And so that we can, again, equity is important, resources are important, that these students are thought about just like our other students. And so I feel that that's one of the things I can do, as well as our other board members.
Excellent, because I was just going to ask, is that something that you plan to do moving forward? And it sounds like you answered that.
I've done it already. I've done it on some occasions when I was out for those 4 years that I was not on the board. I was at the State House making statements and trying to see what was going on. And so it's very important. So it's important to vote for the school board, but it's also important to know who is running for your state legislators and how they feel about education.
Absolutely. And to show up at the State House in droves.
Yes, yes.
To get done what you need to get done. Thank you. Brandon, I'm going to have you take this one. This came in from Nigel. How do you feel about charters and innovation schools?
Yes, and that is a very popular question.
It is a very popular question.
So I'm going to use District 1 as an example. So a lot of times when we have these conversations, a lot of people like to use Thomas Gregg Neighborhood School as an example of why innovation works. So the difference, though, is Thomas Gregg, according to them, they didn't do the innovation process the way that some others have done. Theirs was more community-centered, community wraparound, and built from the community. Unfortunately, that is not how a lot of innovation schools have happened. So for me, I'm not a fan of how, the overarching methodology of how charters and innovations are utilized. I feel like when a neighborhood school is maybe not performing as well as others, that just means that the fight for that school should intensify. I think that we have become, complacent on utilizing charters and innovations as a way to maybe put responsibility on a different, set of eyes. Because they have their own board, right? So there's conflicting things that are happening. So I'm not a fan of the methodology. Would I be lying if I said, I don't know some amazing principals and staff who work at charter and innovation schools? I absolutely do. But I would want it to be, community built, not people with special agendas, not people with any, special or ulterior motives, in mind, but really built from the community, from the ground up. So that's my answer.
Thank you, Nigel, for that question, that very popular question. And thank you, Brandon, for your answer. We are just about to wrap up, but I just want to say thank you again to the three of you for making yourselves available this evening to have this conversation. And thank you to everybody that's tuning in with us right now. We are on Facebook Live, Periscope, which is Twitter, and YouTube as well. So thank you to everybody that's tuned in with us. I wish you all the best in your races, most definitely. I wish all of the candidates the best in their races. But the truth of the matter is that there is someone that will be elected, and then there are people that will not be elected. But I want to ask each of you, and Ms. Gore, you kind of spoke to this earlier when you were talking about the 4 years that you were away. But what is one thing that you are committed to doing to support IPS no matter what happens after November 3rd or whenever we get the results, because it's gonna be a situation. But whenever we find out who those people are, what is one thing that you are committed to doing to support the future of IPS no matter what? And Brandon, I'll go ahead and get started with you.
So yeah, I think that, like I said earlier, the goal is to get elected, right? You put out all this energy, and you're literally putting yourself out there, for your constituents and for people to vote. But at the end of the day, the work continues. So for me, I plan on just continuing to, work with young people, work with families, and just really be authentic and stand 10 toes on what I've been doing. Because if I were to switch it up because I didn't get elected, then I would hope that the community would hold me accountable, because that means that my authentic self was not so authentic.
Sidebar, we will.
Listen, run me the accountability checks. So I just plan on doing what I've been doing. I love working with young people, and I love working with families. And no position and no title will change that. So, it's only up from here, and we can only hope for elevation.
Indeed. DeQuavis, what about you?
Yeah, for me, if I don't get elected to the board, it's going to be business as usual, still working with the kids, doing what I do, advocating for my community. Will I be sad? Yes. But the work still has to be done, and I'll be there to support the board and the rest of the community and making sure that, we are moving in the direction we need to move in.
Wonderful. And Miss Gore, to close us out, what about you?
Well, I will continue doing what I've done. I will continue working in the community of which I work in. And one of my things that I love doing in the community is working with the Environmental Justice Collaborative, of which we deal with the lead that is in the community, and knowing that that is one of the concerns of children who have learning disabilities. And IPS has passed a very good policy to deal with testing students for lead. So I would be working to make sure that that continues. I would also continue to advocate for IPS. I would be at those legislative meetings. I would talk to those representatives that I know and the senators or call in. So there's no way that I would ever stop. And so that's one of the most important reasons why I like to be running at this point for the board, or am running, is because my work would never stop. I'd be here at my kitchen table doing some work all the time. So, because I am very passionate about IPS and public schools, I really want to see them do well, and I want to see the children in the IPS district do well.
Thank you. Thank you all again. Where can people keep up with you all online? Just really quickly, if you have a website or social media or anything like that. Ms. Gore, I'll go ahead and have you go first.
Okay. You can get my website at gore4ips.org.
All right. Brandon, where can people find you?
They can find me on Facebook at Brandon Randall for IPS District 1. And I'm going to have a Facebook Live session here in about 2 minutes, so they can join me on that to talk about healing, trauma, and education.
Wonderful. DeQuavis, where can people find you?
My Facebook is DeQuavis Winston for IPS, and my website is winston4ips.com.
Wonderful. So thank you, each and every one of you, for being with us this evening. Miss Elizabeth Gore, thank you for being here. And Brandon, thank you for being here. And DeQuavis, thank you for being here as well. Have a great evening. And thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in this evening for another episode of What's Good with Ebony Chappelle. This is a show about people doing good things and things that make us feel good. What makes me feel good is doing my civic duty. One part of my civic duty, because that's not where it ends, but it's a great step in the right direction, and that is going out to vote. So again, if you want more information about who's on your ballot and where to go vote and how all of that works out, you can go to vote.nd.gov. It is time for us to depart. I have a zombie dust waiting on me. Cheers to anybody that's having a beverage with me this evening. But thank you all for tuning in. Have a great night and a positive week. Peace.